devilish function, what does anyone think of? How do you define devilish function?
Devilish function.
J'ai negativity coming.
Low
All the
life
enemies.
condition.
Yeah, low life condition.
But that's actually an effect brought on by being attacked by devilish functions. Okay, what's the source of all karmic influence like that? Again, let me finish reading the chapter we're in, and then the next go round, because he's actually going through the whole teaching, right? But do understand, what is the title of what we're reading?
The teaching.
On practicing the Buddha's teaching. So what is Nichiren's purpose in writing this letter? It's to explain to you clearly what the Buddha's teachings are so you can practice according to them. Okay? And then he acknowledges to you what to expect if you do in fact take on that very arduous, difficult thing, which is called practicing according to the Buddhist teachings, because it's very strict. Also, there's immediate opposition from fundamental darkness, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no way to embark on this path of practicing the Buddhist teachings without having to battle fundamental darkness and the three powerful enemies. But what are the three powerful enemies? Don't give them to me by definition. Because it's slandering lay people, slandering priests, slandering false sages. Okay, but what are those really? Are those guys? Are those people? Are those temporary gatherings of the five components? Is that a thing? Any of those
Darkness.
three? They're all manifestations of fundamental darkness. Yes. That's the point. They are functions. They are not people. They're not enterprises. Okay? They are functions within your life. Now, what is the purpose of fundamental darkness? It actually determines the make or break of who becomes the Buddha and who stays in the realm of...
Activate your own Buddhahood.
Again, fundamental darkness doesn't really start to attack until you are on the path of Buddhahood. There's no such thing as fundamental darkness as a secular person that doesn't practice Buddhism. So we're not talking about evil, because there's evil outside of Buddhism. Okay, we're talking about something very specific. So I'm going to get into the specificity of that, so you understand the way I see it. Okay, and that may be right or wrong, but from reading President Ikeda's explanations, it would seem that it's very much in keeping. And frankly, I came to these conclusions before I had President Ikeda actually corroborate my instincts based on my reading the Gosho. Okay? Because this particular Gosho that we happen to read right now, if you'll notice, see that red ink there? That means this is one of the first Goshos I ever read and marked up in this book. Now, I'd read all these Goshos anyhow in the 7 volumes that preceded them. But this is one of the first ones. And I noticed where I marked what was back then, what was important to me that I marked in red. Okay, so how you perceive all this is really a function of your mission, okay, because we don't all have the same mission, and it's not necessary for all of us to experience exactly the same thing as one another for us to all accomplish Kosen Rufu together. Okay, Nietzsche is very clear about that. Okay, so let me continue from last week when we were on page 12, and you might want to put the page numbers from 5 to 12. Okay, and we're starting on 12 again where it says tenacious dialogue and shining humanity. And I'm going to finish off this chapter, and then I'm going to read some reference points stuff before we go on, because I want to make the point that I'm making very clear. Okay, so it says on page 12, tenacious dialogue and shining humanity. The Lotus Sutra is the teaching of Shakabuku. Everybody remembers what we were discussing last week and where this is coming from right now then, right?
Yes.
The refutation, and this is from the Gosho.
Yes.
The Lotus Sutra is the teaching of Shakabuku, the refutation of provisional doctrines. True to the letter of this golden saying, in the end, every last one of the believers of the provisional teachings and schools will be defeated and join the retinue of the Dharma king. The time will come when all people will abandon the various kinds of vehicles and take up the single vehicle of Buddhahood, and the mystic law alone will flourish throughout the land. When the people all chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the wind will no longer buffet the branches, and the rain will no longer break the clods of the soil. The world will be as it was in the ages of Fuxi and Shinnun. In their present existence, the people will be freed from misfortune and disasters and learn the art of living long. Realize that the time will come when the truth will be revealed, that both the person and the law are unaging and eternal. There cannot be the slightest doubt about the sutra's promise of peace and security in their present existence. So we talk about maintaining faith to the last moment of our life. We're not really discussing having to deal with great onslaughts of difficulty to the last moment of our life. But what we are discussing is the correct attitude is to be willing to receive those, to not fear them. Okay? Because the people that reveal that in their life, I mean, if we were going to look at events, difficulties, as a predication of who's good, who's bad, what's powerful, what's not powerful, then where would Nichiren stand? His whole life was very difficult.
Right.
But he won in every single circumstance he was challenged with. And he saved all of us in the process. And what ultimately did those difficulties serve and function as? The examples for us as practitioners of how to engage those circumstances in our daily life and practice according to the Buddha's teachings. Do you understand? Because that's paramount. You've got to understand what the Buddha's teaching is before you can practice according to the Buddha's teaching. You can't be an example of the Buddha's teaching in the absence of that. Do you understand? So he says, this passage clarifies in terms of both reason and the Buddha's intent that the Lotus Sutra's promise of peace and security in this existence is definitely not false. So don't let momentary circumstances start to play with your head. That is fundamental darkness. I'll read it to you. Okay? The Lotus Sutra is the teaching of Shakabuku, the refutation of the provisional doctrines. This is a well-known passage from Ten Ties, the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra. It means that Shakabuku, in the context of the Lotus Sutra, refers to refuting the doctrines of the provisional teachings. Refuting the doctrines of the provisional teachings. Doesn't mean that you're going to go give someone shit that's a Catholic. Okay? Do you understand? That's where you would probably do shoju. All right? In the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni himself refutes these teachings. So in the battle between the provisional and the true, those attached to the provisional teachings of Buddhism, are ultimately refuted by the Buddha himself. So in other words, we don't have to rely on an extrapolation of the Buddha's teachings. He actually fixes all of this in the Lotus Sutra. He qualifies, in the more than 40 years I have not yet revealed the truth. And so forth and so on, from the immeasurable meanings, Lotus Sutra, universal worthy. Right? He said, if they are sincere disciples, when they realize this fact, they will be moved to follow the Buddha's true intent. Now, we know about the 6 stages of practice, right? So what are they? Buddha in theory, hearing the name of the words of the truth, progressive awakening, resemblance to Buddha, right? Same mind as Nichiren is the 5th, and the 6th is Anuttara Samyak, realizing that you are the Buddha yourself, right? Okay, so in the above passage, the image of and so to follow what he's saying here, if they are sincere, so they're pursuing all of this as we all are, right? They understand then through that pursuit they grow. Their perception becomes more clear and correct. They take on a different identity. They go from being the give me a benefit to being I took a vow. I'm a bodhisattva of the earth, and ultimately, I am the Buddha myself exactly as I am. Do you understand? When you do that, that's the teaching in the Lotus Sutra, is it not? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I'll clear.
Yeah.
It's straight up. You have to pause. That is the teaching. That is the teaching. That is the teaching. That's why the Soka philosophy stresses this point. Actual Ichen and Sanzen is the teaching of not only the Buddhism of the sowing, but it's hidden in the depths of the 16th chapter as well. All right, of the essential teaching, actually, the last 16 chapters. If they are sincere disciples, when they realize this fact through the process of practice, they will be moved, they will be motivated, they will have a sincere sense of appreciation, they will become awakened. Okay? And they will become awakened to follow the Buddha's true intent. What is the true intent? Widespread propagation, not individual benefit. Not individual ease of life. Do understand that. Okay? Sorry, that is the truth. Let's lay it out there for you guys that have all been practicing long enough to hear this, not sugar-coated. That's why we're studying it. Because you're getting ready to go into the range of years of practice where this is going to either make or break you. Trust me, I know from my own experience. 4 months from now, I'll start my year 45. I've been through all this. That's why I'm trying to share it with you. Okay? I know a lot of people that think they practice that don't practice. All right? In the above passage, the image of all believers of the provisional teachings coming to correctly abide by the Buddha's intent is described as joining the retinue of the Dharma King, while the concept of all the provisional teachings being integrated into the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra is described as all vehicles becoming the one Buddha vehicle. When the time when the mystic law alone will flourish throughout the land indicates the period in which the mystic law, the ultimate law for attaining Buddhahood to which the Buddha became enlightened, is duly accepted and upheld as the correct Buddhist teaching. That's the law Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, right? This is the latter day of the law. So it's not the law Myoho Renge-kyo from the Buddhism of the Harvest. It's the law Nam-myoho Renge-kyo revealed by the original teacher, Nichiren, in his teaching of the Buddhism of the sowing. That's who's writing the Goshos that we're reading. That's the Buddha's intent and will that we're following, not Shakyamuni's. Do understand that. It is a time when slander and disbelief in the mystic law are swept away, and Buddhism based on this supreme law of life comes to prosper and flourish. Nichiren Daishonin, and that is an aspect of Kosen Rufa being accomplished by the disciples, the original disciples of the original teacher. Do you understand? That's the function of what will occur as they make their advent and fulfill their missions. Nichiren Daishonin is not saying here that one school of Buddhism will gain dominance over all other schools, even though he noted that the 8 and 10 schools of the day were in disarray and quarreled endlessly among themselves, a defining feature of an age of conflict. What he means is that the mystic law, the ultimate essence of the Buddha's enlightenment, the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo aspect of all Buddhas, which is also the original source of the various Buddhist schools, right? Makes sense? Because they all started with Shakyamuni's teachings, right? What's the original teacher of Shakyamuni? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. All right? Will come to function as a fundamental guiding principle of society without opposition or impediment. So we'll get to a point where enough has occurred so that the argument over whether our premise has merit or not is no longer actually an argument. The merit's there, but the practice may not be. The understanding that the teaching exists will be there, but the true understanding and study of it may not be. But it will not be this point in time. You understand? We're progressing to what he's talking about right now. That's why we're going through what we're going through, to leave the correct teaching to the next round of Buddhas that will appear as the teachers to get us to that point. All right? What he means is that the mystic law, the ultimate essence of the Buddha's enlightenment, which is also the original source of the various Buddhist schools, will come to function as the fundamental guiding principle of society without opposition or impediment. That's Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The passage, when the people all chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, describes the establishment of a spiritual framework supportive of Kosen Rufu. We're no longer having to fight everybody. Do you understand? We won't have to do shakabuku at that point in time. We're not talking about having to do refutation. They're all willing to listen. Okay, do you understand? He's making that distinction. He says it refers to a situation where people readily accept the correct teaching upon hearing it without slander or opposition. It is a time when the benefit of this teaching, the law for the enlightenment of all people that the Buddha demonstrated with his life and taught to others, Nichiren, spreads widely among the people. This also signifies establishing the correct teaching in terms of Nichiren's principle of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. The Risho and Kokoran's whole treatise is about that, right? Everybody's with me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Makaguchi, and this is where we get into it, because I'm going to get into in a minute. I'm going to, we talk about Ganken no Go. What's Ganken no Go? Deliberately creating the appropriate karma, right?
Right.
And then we will talk, sometimes we'll say mugi washi, which is what? Doubt-free faith. These are concepts of the Soka Gakkai, actually. Okay? So you try to find mugi washing in here. It isn't in here. But Nichiren talks about it all over the place. Defines it, qualifies what it is. I'm going to read to you from the OTT, straight up. He defines mugi washing, but he doesn't call it mugi washing. He calls it faith that is free of doubt. All right, so he says here, Mr. Makaguchi referred to major good as an aspect of the spiritual value that would be realized. So in other words, the collective karma being reflected back. Do you understand? All right. As an aspect of the spiritual value that would be realized collectively amongst the participant, the population in general, through spreading the mystic law. In other words, the Esho Funi, the inseparability, okay, would start to occur. They're pulled in by virtue of proximity. Okay? Do you understand what I'm saying? Everybody's with me, right? Okay, Mr. Toda, meanwhile, espoused human revolution for all humankind. Okay, he started talking about punishment and reward, right? Inheriting their legacy, I have taken the further step, Daisaku Ikeda, taking the further step of emphasizing the dignity and sanctity of life as the spiritual value to be shared and toward which all humanity should aspire. Now, what is the transitional change for President Ikeda's approach versus that of Makaguchi, talking about major good, which was from his value-creating philosophy, okay, or President Toda talking about human revolution, okay, or President Ikeda talking about dignity and sanctity of life as a spiritual guide. It's the time. That's the differentiator. It's the time. Okay? And what President Ikeda is talking about is the time that President Toda launched the Soka Gakkai. The time is a different time than the time that Tenesaburo Makaguchi launched the Teachers Guild thing. Okay? Which is a different time than Daisaku Ikeda now, because President Toda died when? 58. 57, 58. I think it was, 57, 58. Maybe it was 57. I don't know. But in the 50s, right? Still in the 50s. There was barely television at that point in time. There was no internet. There was no digital source of reference of anything. Everything had to be printed in books. Everything had to be, there was no Google Translate. There was none of the kind of stuff that's uniting the whole world now. Okay, so if it would have been maintained as a secular, as a little monastic enclave thing out of a small sect out of Japan, could never have achieved the acceptance culturally, based, because it's not when we practice Buddhism in other countries, we practice according to the local, right? We don't practice according to some strict Japanese or Buddhist kind of way to practice, right? We always adjust to the time. We always adjust to the capacity. We always adjust to the people. All right? So he's saying Kosen Rufu. So understand, so President Ikeda has had dialogue with many people that are not Nam-myoho Renge-kyo Nichiren Buddhists. And he has been attacked by that over and over again by many Nichiren Buddhists saying, oh, you're not supposed to talk to non-Nichiren Buddhists. You're not supposed to have anything in common with them. That's slander of the law.
Right.
No, he's clarifying the law is this aspect of all humanity that's trying to get out, and that will be ultimately clarified. But if we are at war with them, they'll never listen to anything that we're saying. And if we never respect them as human beings, we'll never be able to perceive the truth that law exists within their lives as well. And our job is to teach them how to overcome delusion. Delusion exists in Buddhism, and delusion exists outside of Buddhism. Delusion exists in everything except Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Okay? Actual Ichiban Sense is the only place where it doesn't exist. And it does not exist in actual Ichiban Sense. Okay? Because you've made the devil of the 6-7 your friend at that point in time. So let me continue. Kosen Rufu is the most difficult of undertakings. It involves an inner transformation in people's lives. The Makaguchi greater good has to come out, or the human revolution has to be done, or the perception and understanding of the dignity and sanctity of life has to become manifest in how people think, and how they view life, and how they view their own life and conduct. Okay? So he's saying faith in the mystic law is a self-motivating force, because you're the influence that either puts the gas on this process or puts your foot on the brake. Nobody else does that for you, one way or the other. It's totally self-motivating. You don't motivate yourself if you're not motivated by the teaching. That's why it's important to understand what the teaching is and to understand what the teaching's saying. It's not promising you no problems. All right? Steadfast efforts in a one-to-one dialogue are indispensable to nurturing that faith, giving each person confidence in his or her potential to change from within. How can you have that dialogue if you haven't experienced the same kinds of challenges? It's bullshit. Okay? That's why Buddhists take on these kinds of lies. It's compassion. It's infinite compassion. It's not stupidity. It's not volunteering for a bunch of lumps on your head because you're a doofus. Okay? It's being willing to go through whatever you must go through to be the living example for the people that you promise to teach. Because you're not going to come into contact with everybody. You're going to come into contact with specific people. And there's a real specific reason why you came into contact with them and they came into contact with you and not somebody else. Okay? Nichiren speaks of all people abandoning the various other vehicles and taking up the single vehicle of Buddhahood. That means of them all starting to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The law does not spread through coercion. So it doesn't spread through threats. Oh, if you don't chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, you're going to go to hell. No, we gotta know why this is the correct teaching, and we've got to then practice and live it. Right. As such, the ideal described in the aforementioned quote will only be realized when the humanism of Nichiren Buddhism gains widespread acceptance, becomes the philosophical current of society, and develops into humankind's shared value. Kosen Rufu cannot be accomplished without tenacious dialogue and the shining humanity of those who spread the law. The great dialogue movement built by the SGI, based on Buddhist humanism, could rightly be called a miracle of the present day. We are the sole organization carrying out the Buddha's decree in the modern world and faithfully practicing Nichiren Buddhism just as he taught. As a result, we have triumphed over countless adversities and vigorously advanced Kosen Rufu. The SGI's humanistic network based on Nichiren Buddhism has grown to encompass 192 countries and territories. In Japan and around the globe, many new SGI facilities are under construction, and increasing numbers of community leaders and friends in countless areas enjoy participating in SGI events. This is all due to the trust that members in each country have won through their tireless efforts to reach out to others through dialogue and to foster friendships in their communities and neighborhoods. Such actions truly embody Nichiren's conviction that the mystic law alone will flourish. He declares that when the mystic law widely prevails, an age of peace and security in this existence will be realized without fail. He then offers an image of what the world could be like when Kosen Rufu is achieved. He writes, the wind will no longer buffet the branches, and the rain will no longer break the clods of soil. When we believe in the mystic law, which provides a fundamental basis for the sanctity of life, and chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, we can achieve a world peace and security in the present existence that is apparent to all. As in the ages of the legendary Chinese ruler Fuxi and Xinnun, peace, prosperity, and happiness will come to permeate the land. Nichiren also says the time will come when the truth will be revealed, and that both the person and the law are unaging and eternal. That the law is unaging and eternal means that the workings of the mystic law, which encompass and give rise to and sustain all phenomena, neither decline nor cease to operate. On one level, this could be taken to mean that all things are harmonized and function to create value amid diversity. That the person is unaging and eternal, on the other hand, does not mean, of course, that we do not grow old or die, but rather through faith in the mystic law, we can establish a state of life pervaded by the four noble virtues: eternity, happiness, true self, and purity. What's that actually also mean? We attain Ichen and Sanzen. Actual Ichen and Sanzen, okay? And in the process of attaining actual Ichen and Sanzen, what have we done? We've crossed over from transmigration with change and advance into birth and death in the realm of Buddhahood, which never stops. Okay, so that's why he's saying we can establish a state of life pervaded by the Four Noble Truths: eternity, happiness, true self, and purity. In this state of life, we are neither perturbed nor defeated by the sufferings of aging or death. Because we understand we're bodhisattvas of the earth. This is what we do. This is what the Buddha teaches will happen. We're practicing the Buddha's teachings. Yeah, there are times when what we go through don't make us happy. If you think that Nichiren sat there and giggled the whole time he was freezing his ass off in that hut, okay, with nothing to eat, I don't know what you're thinking. Now was he all bummed out and pissed off? No. But was he happy to be freezing his ass off and hungry? No. Okay, it's not practical to go through those kinds of challenges and not have them challenge you. That's why they're called challenges. The key is whether the challenge wins and defeats you, or whether you defeat the challenge. Okay? As Shakyamuni clarified, these sufferings arise from illusion or ignorance of the true nature of life. We think of this life only. We don't think of who we are as Buddhas. We don't think of our mission, or that we're Buddhas, and that if we're Buddhas practicing the teaching, we're going to go through what we already know we're going to go through if we study the teaching. In an age when the mystic law's power is freely manifested, people will naturally gain confidence in it and break through ignorance or darkness. In this way, the struggle for Kosen Rufu by those who correctly practice the Buddha's teachings, the struggle for Kosen Rufu by those who correctly practice the Buddha's teachings will give rise to an ideal society in which all people enjoy peace and security in this existence. Why? Because there will be that ever-increasing few that becomes the many that actually do practice according to the Buddha's teachings. And by virtue of that, manifest the life state that brings forward. Okay? This won't be theoretical. It'll cease to be theoretical. There'll be lots of examples of actual Ichen and Sanzen. This goal of peace and security, however, is not to be found merely in some ideal future society. It describes the life state of those who faithfully practice the correct Lotus Sutra teaching with which to realize happiness and actualize a secure and peaceful land. This is clear from the preceding passage that described Nichiren's own struggles. His dynamic stance in fighting for Kosen Rufu, undefeated by hardship, is a shining example of genuine peace and security in this existence. This is the true meaning of this concept in Nichiren Buddhism. This is the true meaning of this concept in Nichiren Buddhism. It really boils down to this is Mugiwashi. When we exert ourselves in our Buddhist practice, our Buddhahood is powerfully activated. Our lives come to brim with supreme joy. There is no tragic self-sacrifice in Nichiren Buddhist spirit of selfless dedication. There is no tragic self-sacrifice in the Nichiren Buddhist spirit of selfless dedication or not begrudging one's life. When we vigorously challenge ourselves, joy always pulses vibrantly in our lives. We always win. Nichiren concludes on practicing the Buddhist teachings with, how can such joy possibly be described? And in the closing of the opening of the eyes, a writing in which he embarks on a still more detailed discussion of practicing as the Buddha teaches, he expresses his tremendous inner joy, saying, for what I have done, I have been condemned to exile, but it is a small suffering to undergo in this present life, and not one worth lamenting. In future lives, I will enjoy immense happiness, a thought that gives me great joy. I will forever attain Buddhahood, is what he's saying in that sentence. The struggle for Kosen Rufu is a succession of hardships. These very efforts, however, they're this thing that allows us to win. That's why I say that's why I was trying to create the analogy of the devil of the sixth heaven is our personal trainer. It's only by our relationship with that influence and then battling it and overcoming it that we're Buddhists. So without that, we could never be Buddhists. It's my best friend. It's like what he said. Who was the sheriff that tried to send him to Tatsunakuchi? Whatever. My best friend, my good friend. He always called all of his enemies his good friends. Anything that makes you chant Daimoku is your good friend. The struggle for Kosen Rufu is a succession of hardships. Heino Seimin was the dude's name. These very efforts, however, also enable us to manifest the life state of Buddhahood, which is accompanied by unsurpassed joy. Those who strive all out for Kosen Rufu always savor such deep happiness and fulfillment. There is no greater peace and security in this existence than that found in the life state of one who truly understands the Buddhist principle that great obstacles lead to enlightenment. A steadfast commitment to striving for Kosen Rufu, as Nichiren teaches, firmly grounded in his writings, is the key to achieving a life of enduring happiness and hope. And what have I got written here? Oh, chant. Okay, so let me just go on to qualify a couple of things here. First of all, when we talk about belief and understanding, when we talk about this issue of Mugiwashi, all right, what are we really talking about? And the Daishonin defines this. You can't find Mugiwashi in here, but you can certainly find it here. Okay? And it's not called Mugiwashi, but it describes what Mugiwashi is. This is from point 1 of chapter 4 of the orally transmitted teachings. It's on the chapter called Belief and Understanding. Six important points. I'm only going to talk about this one. It says, on Words and Phrases, volume 6 says that the Lotus Sutra of the correct, in the Lotus Sutra of the Correct Law, this chapter is titled Belief and Wish chapter. Though the meaning is similar, the word wish is less appropriate than understanding. The chapter describes how the 4 disciples, Subhuti, Kityayana, Makashayapa, and Magdayana, gained an understanding of the teachings, but what justification is there for the use of the word wish? Nichiren says, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says, the 28 chapters that make up the Lotus Sutra bear various titles. Belief and Understanding is the title given to this chapter. The truth of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, too, has its origins in the single word belief or faith. And it is through this single word belief that the Buddhas of the three existences of past, present, and future attained their enlightenment. So what's it say? What's he say? Faith in the Buddha's teachings is the way you get to stage 6. Okay? Faith in the Buddha's teachings is the way you get to stage 6. Everybody that's ever become a Buddha, a true Buddha, okay, got there based on faith. All right? This word, he's trying to qualify. What is belief? What is, faith?
Yeah.
All right? This word belief is a sharp sword that cuts off fundamental darkness or ignorance. And again, what is he saying? What are we talking about belief of? The belief of what the Buddha says is the correct way to practice the Buddha's teachings. That's what this whole Gosho is about. All right? The word belief is a sharp sword that cuts off fundamental darkness or ignorance. Therefore, with regard to belief, words and phrases says, belief means to be without doubt. It is a sharp sword that cuts away doubt and perplexity. Because once you quit doubting, there's no perplexity. There's only follow the teaching. And the belief is that if I follow the teaching, I'm going to get to where I want to go. Okay? No matter what I'm experiencing now. Okay? My joy is the fact that I'm able to continue. I'm not able to be defeated. No matter what world, 9 world I'm in. The 10th world is still activated in it. Do you understand? Even if I'm in hell, I am in the hell of a Buddha attaining Buddhahood. That's what I was trying to explain earlier. The word belief is a sharp sword that cuts off fundamental darkness or ignorance. Therefore, with regard to belief, words and phrases says belief means to be without doubt. It is a sharp sword that cuts away doubt and perplexity. Understanding is another name for wisdom. Understanding is, okay, do you understand? Okay. Belief means to be without a doubt. That means to accept the teachings without question. Okay? Understanding is what occurs when you do that. Wisdom is created. Belief represents the value or price we attach to a jewel or treasure. Do we value it enough to believe in the teaching before we have the capacity to understand? How can we understand, come to understanding, if we don't first believe? That's my point. Do you get it? That's what he's trying to clarify. Mugi washing isn't about getting a bunch of kiss-ass people that line up like a human centipede. Okay? That's not the point. Do you understand? Am I being too graphic? Okay, we're not talking about a bunch of cookie cutters. That's not mugi washing. We all have the same faith. It's for the purpose of us all being the same. No, because we will never be the same, and our mugi washing will never be reflected the same, because our mugi washing is there for the purpose of shakabuku. Our mugi washing is there for the purpose of the dependent origination relationships that we have. Yeah. Why are we all here together now and not somewhere else? Separated. Because we're all here now. Okay? That's it. That's it. All right? So continue. I don't want to get too far. Understanding is another name for wisdom. Wisdom comes from faith. Faith doesn't come from wisdom. Belief represents the value or price we attach to a jewel or treasure, and understanding represents the jewel itself. It is through the one word belief that we are able to purchase the wisdom of the Buddhas of the three existences. That wisdom is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Belief is the source of wisdom. And belongs to the stage of hearing the name and the words of the truth. That's only the second stage, right? Because that's all we did, to hear the name and the words of the truth. We went from being a Buddha in theory to hearing the name and the words. That was it. From that point on, faith is what was going to propel us to change in advance, or not change in advance, but advance whatever stage 3 is. I'm trying to talk too fast. Stage 4, stage 5, and stage 6. It all starts with that belief. Belief is the source of wisdom and belongs to the stage of hearing the name and the words of the truth. Outside of belief, there can be no understanding. And outside of belief, there can be no belief. Pardon me, and I mixed that up. No wonder you looked at me funny. Okay, outside of belief, there can be no understanding, and outside of understanding, there can be no belief. Okay? They're the truth. They're the truth. Unperceived and perceived. All right? Doesn't change what the truth is. It is through this one word belief that the seeds of perfect enlightenment are sown. And what is perfect enlightenment? Enlightenment. Actual Ichiren Sanzen. Now when Nichiren and his followers believe in and accept Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they are gaining possession of a great, precious jewel. Okay? And the jewel is the belief part, right? In the words belief and understanding chapter, this cluster of unsurpassed jewels has come to us unsought. Belief is the seed of wisdom, but failure to believe will lead one to fall into hell. Again, we may say that belief corresponds to the principle of eternal and unchanging truth. Belief is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It's your original state. Therefore, belief means to experience the knowledge that all dharmas or phenomena are every one of them the Buddha, Dharma, or law. Because if you perceive your original state, you perceive that very clearly. Everything is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Right? That's actually Ichiren Sanzen. Okay? And to believe in the single truth or principle of the true aspect of all phenomena, which we all understand is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Understanding corresponds to the wisdom that functions in accordance with the law of Myoho Renge-kyo. Understanding corresponds to the wisdom that functions in accordance with changing circumstances. That is to say, the immeasurable wisdom that is freely gained and employed. Everybody's with me? Yep. Yeah? Okay. Volume 9 of Words and Phrases is belief means to be without doubt. Understanding means to have a clear perception of the matter. Okay? Volume 6 of Words and Phrases says that, so what do you do in the absence of having a clear perception of the matter? Like when you're facing and you don't understand and help me understand.
You chant.
With
Faith.
faith. Because faith will bring forth what you're asking for.
Right.
Okay? Belief means to be without doubt. Understanding means to have a clear perception of the matter. Volume 6 of Words and Phrases says the disciples of intermediate capacity, when they heard the Buddha preach the simile and parable chapter for the first time, rid themselves of doubt and perplexity and entered upon the path of insight expounded in the great vehicle. Therefore, this step of the process is termed belief. They then proceeded to the path of practice as expounded in the great vehicle. Therefore, this is termed understanding. Okay? So, because faith will get you the understanding. But then once you have the understanding, you must abide. I mean, that's practicing as the Buddha teaches. What you if you lack understanding, it's cool to blow this off or to slip by it. But once you understand it, it's the blueprint for how you're to view your life. You don't view it as Nichiren's life. He's teaching you, this is your life. Please understand that. The purpose of this Buddhism is not to embellish Nichiren Daishonin into a hierarchical entity that we could never be like. Is to emphasize that he is exactly like us and we can all do anything he did if we approach it the same way he did. That's why his whole teaching is predicated on expressing the approach. Right. What is he writing about here? Every one of these goddamn goshos is about approach. It's about perceiving the teaching as the Buddha rather than somebody being taught. It's about discarding any teaching that is not the Buddha's teaching as one that you're trying to emulate. Do you understand? Okay, I'm sorry if I'm getting carried away here. Try not to. So he says, volume 6, right? Is that where I'm at?
Receives
Okay.
around the world in
okay, volume 6 of On the Words and Phrases, commenting on this, says, looking at the matter from the viewpoint of great vehicle, we may say that two words, belief and understanding, refer to the two paths of insight and practice. First one rids oneself of doubt, and therefore this is called belief. Then one proceeds to embark on the path of practice, and this is called understanding. The term belief applies to both paths, but the term understanding applies only to the path of practice. Okay? Mm-hmm. Therefore, the path of practice is termed understanding. I'll stop there. Now, last but not least, before I start reading again, let me just go to the Dictionary of Buddhism. Did you give this back to me? Didn't I give you one? I shouldn't have two of these, and I do for some reason. No, you've got yours. Okay. Did somebody else give me one of these back? I don't know how I got this. Okay, maybe I've just bought several and didn't know it. All right, fundamental darkness. Let me read to you what the dictionary definition of fundamental darkness is, since we mention it so often. And then keep it in mind as we now go into this next chapter, which is like, I got to tell you, it's my honor to read this chapter to you. This is some really deep, correct stuff. And I feel so fortunate that I just had to battle all the bullshit that I just battled for the last 4 days, because it has enabled me to perceive how I really need to try and convey this. Okay, so let's go to fundamental darkness. Also fundamental ignorance, or primal ignorance, original ignorance. Do you understand? What is fundamental darkness? It's the flip side of fundamental nature of enlightenment. Good and evil are the same thing, right? Okay, so understand that. Everybody has fundamental darkness. Even Buddhas have fundamental darkness. Right. There's no such thing as eliminating fundamental darkness. You can only defeat fundamental darkness by being able to perceive it, and with faith, overcoming it every time it attacks you.
Yes.
All right? So, Gampan no Mumyo. Also, fundamental ignorance or primal ignorance, the most deeply rooted illusion inherent in life. Okay, so it's the deepest, funkiest, darkest thing, right? Mm-hmm. And rooted, inherent. It means it's inseparable. It is a part of that original life, right? Mm-hmm. Said to give rise to all other illusions. So everything that perplexes us originates with this root source. Understand? Mm-hmm. Do you understand? That is the teaching.
Yes.
All right. Said to give rise to all other illusions. Darkness, in this sense, means inability to see or recognize the truth. Mm. What is the truth? Yeah, but exactly, and so is everybody else, and this Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is actually everything. Okay? And nothing is separated. Okay? This sense means inability to see or recognize the truth, particularly the true nature of one's life, as is expressed by Nichiren. All right? The term fundamental darkness is contrasted with the fundamental nature of enlightenment, which is the Buddha nature inherent in life, primally, also. Okay? According to the Srimele Sutra, fundamental darkness is the most difficult illusion to surmount. The most difficult illusion to surmount, and can be eradicated only by the wisdom of the Buddha. Okay? So, fundamental darkness is only conquered at the point in time of entering the 52nd stage of the 52 stages, which is Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which is actual Ichiden Sanzen. Okay? Tiantai interprets darkness as illusion that prevents one from realizing the truth of the middle way. Okay? The truth of the middle way is the same as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? And divides such illusion into 42 types, the last of which is fundamental darkness, because the first 10 stages, you've got to get there first. That's the starting point. This illusion is only extirpated when one attains the stage of perfect enlightenment, So extirpated, what's that mean?
Taking
Taken out, or no longer functional, no longer effective. It doesn't mean expiate. It's not taken away. Extirpate, I believe, is to render neutered, render, it's lost its power, because you know when you're hit by that what it is, and you go deal with it in front of the Gohonzon. Even if you have to go, do it for a while. Tentai interprets darkness as illusion that prevents one from realizing the truth of the middle way, and divides such illusion in 42 types, the last of which is fundamental darkness. The illusion is only extirpated. This illusion is only extirpated when one attains the stage of perfect enlightenment, the last of the 52 stages of bodhisattva practice. Nichiren interprets fundamental darkness as ignorance of the ultimate law, or ignorance of the fact that one's life is essentially a manifestation of that law. You knew what he was saying there, right? It's ignorance of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the fact that your life is really a manifestation of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? That's what that just said. Which he identifies as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Sorry. Everybody's with me? In the treatment of illness, Nichiren states the heart of the Lotus School is the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, which reveals that both good and evil are inherent even in those at the highest stage of perfect enlightenment. The fundamental nature of enlightenment manifests itself as Brahma and Chakra, whereas the fundamental darkness manifests itself as the devil king of the sixth heaven. Nichiren thus regards fundamental darkness as latent even in the enlightened life of the Buddha. Okay, because he defines, Ichinen Sanzen. And the devil king of the sixth heaven as a manifestation or personification of life's fundamental darkness. That life state when we're being attacked by devilish functions. They're not devils. The record of the orally transmitted teaching reads, belief is a sharp sword that cuts off fundamental darkness or ignorance. Okay, now, let me get last before I start reading, because that touched on a term that, again, President Ikeda says President Toda talked about, but you won't find it really spoken of as much as it is. And it took me many years to discern what in the world is he really, really talking about. Devilish functions. I say it all the time now, right? Devilish functions, devilish functions. What are devilish functions?
the manifestation of the darkness, fundamental darkness.
Exactly. I mean, devilish functions are things that it's all Sancho Shima.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all the things that when we're practicing correctly, when we say, I want to chant 5 hours today, and suddenly, you drop your glass of coffee and,
You get angry.
the chair gets turned over and the phone rings and it's somebody with an emergency and it's this and suddenly you twisted your ankle. What the F is going on? Okay? That's the challenge that is trying to keep you from perceiving the truth. Okay? That's something saying, oh, you think you're all that in a bag of chips. You're going to go chant 5 hours, right? Are you really? Are you really, really? And so it's up to you to decide. Are you going to be defeated by what's going on? Or are you going to go flip the middle finger to that situation and get in front of the Gohanzan, even if you're suffering in front of the Gohanzan? You're not suffering as far as chanting Daimoku. Do you understand what I'm saying? There are times we can't wait to only get in front of the Gohanzan when everything's great. There are going to be times when we get in front of the Gohanzan when things seem to be shit. Often.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's if you only chant when you have problems, frankly speaking. If you chant all the time consistently, it will not always be that way. There will be many times when you're chanting filled with happiness and appreciation and clarity. Okay? So, but my point is that you are correct in the other point. We'll all be in front of the Gohanzan when it's like that. But we should understand that that is a temporary aspect, that it is a devilish function. Yeah. It is it's like the thing that I love about this Go show, that I like for the last 3 days, oh God, I already lost it, where'd it go? you know, I was going to, now I gotta go look it up again. I pulled the, excuse me, one moment, please. Did anybody know what page this is on? On the Buddha's teachings? It should be right about here. On the Buddha's, on practicing the Buddha's teachings. 391. Okay. Let me keep this at 347 and then go to 391. Hang on. $391. The thing that I have is this: did I not warn you in advance? That's the one line out of this Go Show that I want you to all remember is in this Go Show. Did I not warn you in advance? Right there. Did I not warn you in advance? Remember, it says that. Just like I showed you where it says letter to Rishi Taburo about, you know, it would seem that it's not the bad things you've done, but the faith.
Just don't. I'll just hardly see. Show here.
Yeah, okay, pardon me for the camera, pardon me. It says right here. Did I not warn you in advance? If you read this Go Show and read this Go Show and read this Go Show and you realize this Go Show is telling you how you must live your life once understanding has taken the place of belief. Do you understand? You've transitioned beyond just, I will believe, to, oh, now I get it. I'm the Buddha. Which means if I really understand that, I must behave as Nichiren.
Yes.
Okay? So, I just want to leave you with this last thing. So you know that that's there. But again, I will read this to you again. And this is once again talking about Mugiwashin, even though it's not defined as Mugiwashin. Although and again, this is from Opening of the Eyes.
Yeah.
Although I and my disciples may encounter various difficulties, although I and my disciples may from time to time get their asses kicked, if we do not harbor doubts in our hearts when we get our asses kicked, we will, as a matter of course, attain Buddhahood. Do not have doubts simply because heaven does not lend you protection. Do not be discouraged because you do not enjoy an easy and secure existence in this life. This is what I have taught my disciples morning and evening, and yet they begin to harbor doubts and abandon their faith. Foolish men are likely to forget the promises they have made when the crucial moment comes. Some of them feel pity for their wives and children and grieve at the thought of parting from them in this life. In countless births, throughout many long kalpas, they have had wives and children, but parted from them in every existence. They have done so unwillingly and not because of their desire to pursue the way of the Buddha. Since they must part with them in any case, they should remain faithful in their belief in the Lotus Sutra, what the Lotus Sutra teaches, what the Buddha's teachings are, the manner in which they should live their lives, and make their way to Eagle Peak, attain Buddhahood in their present form. That's how they'll help everybody, not by living a life of no problems, okay? By living a life filled with examples of solutions to countless problems. Do you understand? Is everybody with me?
Yes.
With that preamble, let me begin to read part 2 on practicing. Are you telling me I'm done? I'm done? Okay, well, it's probably good. That way we start out straight up.
Yeah.
Do you realize this is some heavy, good shit here? If you have not read this, those of you out there, before I start to read it to you next week, you might want to try and take a gander. Okay? Because this is now a second pass through the Go Show from another deeper level of perspective. Thank you very much. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.